So for this last project, I'm holding here in my hand the stencil that Heather just used on her last project. We're going to need both pieces, so the larger rectangle and then the inside piece that fits in that. So if you still have ink around the outside of that from her sugar cube ink application, you'll want to wash that off. You can do that really easily by just running it under water or taking a baby wipe. Pigment ink comes off of stencils the easiest. If you do go to wash any dye inks off of your stencils tonight, you might want to use our Stamper Spritz for that. It gets the inks off of just about anything. I also use it on the lid of my Misty when I get some stray black and colored inks across there. So you're going to need that stencil. You're also going to need the Mosaic Leaves stencil, card packet number 4. And here's a look at the project that we're making. So this background, actually, what you can't see here in person is that it's all one layer. So it's really dimensional looking with those two colors, and I'm going to show you how to achieve that with the 2 different pieces of this masking stencil. And these are the 2 pieces in your kit. So you should have a sugar cube card base and this extra piece here. This measures, I think we said earlier, just in case anybody needs the measurements, it's 2.5 by 3 7/8 for this piece here. So we're going to start with the card base. We've done this step several times now, so hopefully you guys are familiar with lining up the card pieces and card bases with those etched alignment guides. This time we're using the card base, so you're going to line up all 4 corners with the outer etched line of the stencil. I like to turn it towards the light so I can see it catch the light as I'm aligning it. Okay, then we'll just tack that down with our purple tape, and then we're going to use confetti cake ink to blend inside this rectangle. If you look at the finished card, you can see that this center piece is covering most of the inside of that rectangle, so we're not going to blend all the way to the center. We're going to use our confetti cake brush and our confetti cake ink. Okay, so we have the confetti cake ink that I'm applying with a circular motion, and then I'm going to take and apply to my stencil opening in the same circular motion. The last time I used the confetti cake, I went with a dark to light effect, but this time I'm just going to do the same level of color all the way around the outside. You guys join me along in blending this. It does take a little while to build up the color on this stencil. Okay, so after you've blended around the outside, leaving that middle part open, you can use that extra piece of cardstock that you have. That's what's going to go in this space, just to see that you've gotten enough ink to cover where you want it to cover. I think we did pretty good there, so we can remove this stencil mask. And I'll remove my purple tape pieces as well. And then we're done with the confetti cake ink, so that one is going off to the side. So the next thing we're going to use is this piece. Okay, so when we use this piece, we're going to need the pixie spray again, just like Susan did when she adhered that piece, and then we're going to tack it right down over the top of the area that we just blended, covering up that area that we just blended with the confetti cake. And now we've got this stencil. So this is the Mosaic Leaves stencil, probably one of my most used stencils. Looks great in a fall color combination. Also looks awesome in what we're going to do right now, kind of more of a tropical look as well. I do need some pixie spray on the back of this one, so we'll just spray the back of that. And we'll fly it around in the air a little while here. So we're going to apply 3 different colors of ink through this stencil. We're using candy corn, pineapple, and guava. And like Susan talked about, I always like to start with the lightest color so you're not getting any transfer of darker inks onto your lighter brushes. So I'm going to start with the pineapple, and then I'm piggybacking on Heather's triangle method by going in a triangular arrangement with the colors. So up here is my yellow, yellow, yellow. So that makes a triangle as we're doing that color. And then we're going to go with the orange and do orange, 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 another triangle. And then the same with the guava, filling in the other open spaces. So we'll open up that pineapple, circular motion, and then we're going to start in the top left corner here. So next up is the candy corn. All right, so we've got our triangle of candy corn. And then we'll move on to the guava. You guys will see how dark mine looks in comparison to Sweet Susan's pastel pink. All right, and we'll go all right, this is the big reveal. This is my favorite part. I'm going to try not to smudge. See, you guys did so good on your cards, and now I have a chance to mess myself up again. Now, this is where I like to take my picker die pick tool and get underneath there, so I don't have to try to get my finger under and then risk getting ink on my fingers. So we're just going to go underneath here and then pull that up. And you can see the really cool effect, all one layer on that card base. So you've got the center with the confetti cake and then around the outside with the pattern and the 3 colors. I love how that turned out. All right, so now we are going to do an emboss resist technique on this piece of cardstock. I'm going to put that down in the MISTI. We're going to do a white on white emboss with this, and we're going to do that with this stamp here. So this is the kind of sketchy line stamp. Keep in mind when you place this down onto your cardstock that you're going to want a sentiment at the bottom, so you want to leave enough room for that, really nesting this up towards the top of your cardstock about as far as it can go without hanging off of your piece of cardstock. And I'm going to pick that up then with the lid, and I'll get out my powder tool to condition that before we do the embossing. So after I've conditioned my cardstock with that powder tool, then I can use the Versamark ink to stamp that down onto the cardstock. All right. Take that guy out. Grab my piece of scratch paper and we'll pour our embossing powder over the top. I did say this earlier, but all embossing powders are not created equally. So if you are experiencing issues with your embossing, it could be your powder. I really love our fine detail powder, and we've also given you some other tips to try out. So it could be the fact that you might not be conditioning your cardstock, or Susan gave several tips for heating it properly. But if you're still not having luck and you don't have Tailored Expressions embossing powder, I would highly recommend it. All right, so we're going to take this guy and emboss it now. Hold, please. Again, let it heat up before you take it to your cardstock. You can put a little heat underneath if you like that. Then you can come in over the top, moving slowly across your image as you watch it turn shiny. I did this earlier too, and I about burned my fingers off, so I'm actually going to grab the tweezers this time. We also want to make sure we give our embossing powder time to dry before we put any ink over the top of it. It does take maybe 5 seconds to dry, so if you touch it right after you've heated it, you'll end up with some embossing powder on your finger, but it doesn't take too long to really set into that cardstock. So we're going to, according to the project you see here, we're going to create a yellow glow that's going to sit behind that butterfly. We're going to do that with the pineapple ink. Grab my blender brush, and we're going to go right about in the center of that embossed area and just apply that ink with a little bit of pressure to begin with, and then lighten up on the brush and continue in a circular motion. So that's going to give us a nice light yellow glow around the outside and a little bit heavier application in the middle, which is going to end up being covered up by the butterfly that we are adhering to that. And then the emboss resist, you can see how the embossing powder resisted the color that we applied to the cardstock, so you can see that pattern pop out even more on the cardstock. Got my MISTI then, and we will finish up the last of the stamping. We're going to put that sentiment like I talked about. It's just a note that we're going to use on this one. Place that down in your MISTI without the black foam in it. And here's the just a note. Place that down here. Need another little magnet there. Center it in that open space at the bottom. You should not be stamping over the top of any embossing powder, so hopefully you don't have any embossed image down there at the bottom. Again, we're going to look at this and see if we can get that lined up. I think this time it's about perfect. We're gonna go with it. No adjustment needed. Okay. So we'll just stamp that down maybe a couple times for that nice crisp black. So our last step is the butterfly. You should have one full piece of that sugar cube cardstock left. And we're going to use that rounded wing butterfly, the large stamp, the larger round wing butterfly. We're going to stamp that onto the cardstock here. Doesn't really matter exactly where because we are going to die cut this eventually when we're done stamping. You'll have lots of this extra cardstock to either die cut and stamp your butterflies or stamp and die cut your butterflies, whichever direction you want to do it. So inking that up with the Oreo and stamping it down. I'm going to leave it in the MISTI just for the ease of stamping this layer, but I'm not going to use the insert. I'm just going to use the acrylic block. If you want to stick your foam insert back in and have the ability to stamp this more than once, you can certainly do that. But this is going to be a guava butterfly, and I'm going to take it off and do it over here because, you know, I'd probably drop my ink pad right onto my cardstock. Happens. All right, so now if I look over the top of this image, I can see where I want it to fit. Then make sure I press hard to get a nice impression since I don't have another option after I lift it up. Looks pretty perfect there. That guy is finished and we can die cut that out. Okay, so here we have the die to cut this out, and like Susan mentioned before, you want to use those antennae as your guide to place this die. You should see the black line around the outside of the whole image as you're lining it up. Got a little bit of my Scotch removable. And the thing I haven't mentioned about this is you can actually tape it right over the top of what you've stamped. It's not going to pull up any of the ink. It is literally the best thing for taping your dies down. Okay, so die cut butterfly. This guy, let's put this down first. So we're going to use our foam squares. I'm going to use this little extra piece that we kind of pulled off of the roll and place my foam squares down. I always like to make sure I get ample foam in the middle of my piece that I'm adhering so that the middle doesn't sink. I know for a lot of us that mail our cards, they get smushed in the mail, and I never want that middle to be sunken when my recipient gets it. So we will just adhere that then in the center of this blue area. And we can kind of pop our butterfly wings out and put the liquid adhesive right down the center. And adhere that over the middle of our pineapple blended glow. We're getting there. Okay, I want to make sure I get that tacked down really well. It takes a little bit of extra to hold it down because we are gluing it over something that's embossed. And then I'm going to put some more adhesive on the top of the center of the butterfly. And I'll get my sparkle bombs out. Isn't that what we called them earlier?
Yes.
So if you guys want to see, we do offer these. We gave you a little baggie of them for the class, which you should have lots of extras left over. But we do also sell these. They're actually called Bits and Pieces White Rhinestones, but we lovingly name them Sparkle Bombs. So I take the biggest rhinestone, I'm going to put that in the center of the body, and then I'm going to put 2 of the medium-sized rhinestones on each side of the large one. Voila!